Joining us, co-founder of the Lincoln Project, Mike Madrid, President Emeritus at the Council on Foreign Relations, Richard Haass, New York Times opinion columnist David French, and former senior official at the State Department and the CIA, Ned Price. By the way, his shirt, in case you were wondering, we believe it's a Harley-Davidson shirt, and it's talking about a piston. Full disclosure for anybody who was curious about the words on that man's shirt. Shane is not happy any longer, Mike. And it's not like we just found one guy out there. We have been hearing this over and over from people who are looking at this White House and saying, I don't like what's going on. And Iran is the thing they bring up. Iran and the gas prices, they bring it up without fail. Can the president just declare victory and pretend it's all over?
No, I think we've officially reached the delusional phase. Katie, just 2 days ago, I was in South Texas, down in the Rio Grande Valley area, in some of those contested races. And this is everything everybody is talking about. It is the economy. It is gas prices. It is this regret for this decision that was made a few years ago down in those parts that has lots to do with cattle ranching and the price of beef and how he's kind of hurting these longtime Trump supporters. So their Trump fatigue syndrome, as I've been saying, has set in. You heard it there from Shane. You're hearing it all over the country. And the fundamentals of this race are just in a very, very difficult place for Republicans not named Trump and named Trump who are going to be on the ballot in November.
David?
I think the way that Shane framed it is exactly the way this is happening around the country. I'm just done. I'm out. It's over. Some people regret their vote. Some people don't. But that is a very real sentiment that I hear. I was with him. Now I'm not. It wasn't what he promised. And I think we really have to distinguish. Most people voted for the Trump idea they saw in the commercials, lower inflation, better economy. Only a minority of people were really all in on the whole vengeance project. But that's been the heart. That's where Trump's heart is on this vengeance project against his enemies, not on making the American people more prosperous, not on greasing the skids of the economy. He is on a vengeance campaign, and people are just over it. They are exiting the movement with at an accelerating rate. And keep these approval ratings in mind. He's down in the low 30s. Without a big recession. If we hit serious economic headwinds, you could see a truly historic collapse.
And do you think that could happen in the next 2 months?
That's just speculation. It's absolute speculation. You could see if the economy starts to improve somewhat, if he backs off on tariffs, if he ends the war, you might actually see some repair in his approval rating. But right now, he is on a negative trajectory. All of the signs are negative for him. And he doesn't seem to be interested in doing any of the even simple things he could do to make the electoral prospects of the GOP better.
So let's just stay on the politics of this for just one more beat. And Mike, I'm going to go back to you. If Donald Trump tries to put this on the back burner, tries to do the sanctions thing instead, and the GOP has a reprieve from Donald Trump threatening to bomb Iran, do you expect that they will be able, if they start flooding the airwaves, to get in and do damage if Donald Trump is able just to back off?
Look, I think David characterized this all very well, and I think you're setting up the right question, but that all presumes that Donald Trump has the capacity to do that. He's never demonstrated that. In fact, he's demonstrated the exact opposite. So look, that is the right question. Political consultants and political operatives all over the country looking at races are saying, if these adjustments are made, what's the likelihood of Republicans closing the gap again? I would submit that there's much more likely to be even further downside than there is upside. And the reason is this. The consumer confidence numbers are actually sitting below Trump's support levels. 24% of Americans think the country's heading in the right direction. Trump's at 33% in job approval. That means there's still a lower floor that he can go in. And if the Strait of Hormuz situation doesn't resolve itself and Iran has no reason to help him, out of this quagmire, then you could see higher gas prices. So this is going to get the likelihood of this getting worse is far greater than it getting better. So as difficult as the environment is right now for Republicans and Trump, I would be, I think the betting, markets would probably suggest this gets worse for Republicans, not better in the next 60 days.
The messaging is strange to me. Why would you post anything with mission accomplished on it? even if you're trying to say, I accomplished my mission quicker, but using that term is so fraught. I mean, all it says to the American public is forever war in the Middle East.
Well, I think this really gets at how Donald Trump sees himself. He sees himself as different from his predecessors, different from George W. Bush, certainly different from Barack Obama and Joe Biden. But look, this issue of Iran is in rare company because I think it's one of the very few meta issues that is going to define the rest of this presidency. And what I mean by that is, there are all sorts of policy issues wrapped up in Iran. It's rising prices, it's gas prices, it's inflationary pressure, it's seeing Americans coming home in body bags. But it's actually bigger than that. It's this question of authenticity. Who is this guy? This was a guy who ran both in 2016, 2020, and 2024 as, again, I'm different from the ones who came before me. I'm not going to get Americans into stupid wars in the Middle East. I'm not going to bring our people home back in body bags. And Americans, including Shane on the screen, are starting to realize with this issue, with the Epstein files, with a small handful of issues, that everything this guy told us actually is not true. And these are core, foundational issues to his identity, or the identity he sold on the campaign.
Yeah, and they're all around him looking strong and tough and being different and better than everybody else, willing to go places nobody else was brave enough. I mean, just the image. He's used that image of the fists on the table on everything. He clearly believes it's his toughest looking image. Do you think people start to look at all this and the way that he's making unilateral decisions on everything from bombing Iran to declaring the Gulf of Mexico is, now the Gulf of America today. The Lake Ontario is now Lake America. Do they start to see him as a megalomaniac?
Well, you can declare toughness on certain things, but at a certain point, Americans will start to see that your words are hollow. Lake Ontario is a great example. The Gulf of America is a great example. I don't know that many of Americans are using this terminology. Let's actually take something more important. The Strait of Hormuz. President Trump said again today. He has said it in recent weeks repeatedly. The Strait of Hormuz is open. He typically goes on to say, yeah, sure, occasionally they're firing drones and, the Iranians are doing crazy stuff there, but it's open. Actually, it's not. And Americans will come to recognize that, those who already haven't, because gas prices will not go down until it actually is open. The inflationary pressure that this war has brought on in terms of rising grocery prices, rising everyday prices, those will not come down until the strait actually is open and this war actually is concluded.
And that is a good way to go to you, Richard. It takes two to tango here. And unless Iran plays along, Donald Trump can't decide unilaterally that the war is off.
Well, he can declare it's off. He can reduce or even end U.S. involvement. It doesn't mean, though, we then have a situation that will give him what he wants. Iran, without U.S. pressure, is unlikely to make the strait open for all, highly unlikely. It will, I expect, charge tolls. And then there's still everything else, Katie, from the nuclear file to their support for groups like Hamas to their conventional military means. It's a long list of things. So the president can declare mission accomplished. He can declare the strait open. But declaring don't make it so. I could sit here and declare I'm a better golfer than Tiger Woods. It's unlikely to be terribly persuasive. I think, if he does back away, I could imagine the price of oil coming down somewhat. Just because it'll reassure people that we're unlikely to come to blows again with Iran. But it doesn't mean the strait's going to be open, and the price is certainly not going to come back to anywhere near it was 6 months ago.
And there's a question of whether it comes down enough to get people feeling better about the economy. I want to play, we talked a moment ago about Lake Ontario, Donald Trump declaring it to be Lake America. He's also now talking about renaming some other stuff. Let me play it.
The lake change, Lake of America, was something I've been thinking about for a long time, actually. As you know, we took something called the Gulf of Mexico. We changed it, and now it's very routinely the Gulf of America. So if you think about it, we have a Gulf and we have a lake. Now all we need is an ocean. So maybe we'll have to change the name of the Atlantic and or the Pacific. Maybe we'll change them both.
Yeah, okay, maybe he's joking, but is it funny? Who's laughing? David, what do you make of that?
It's totally frivolous. It's extremely stupid. It's not winning over anybody. It's alienating at least some people, but it's perfectly symbolic of the megalomania of his current term. I wouldn't shock me if the next phase is trying to name some of these bodies of water and geographic locations after himself. I mean, we've seen a concerted effort to expand the Trump name into American life on a much larger scale. He's obsessed with a ballroom. He's obsessed with the aesthetics of Washington, D.C. These are like the signs of an aging authoritarian trying to establish his enduring legacy, not the signs of an energetic president who's trying to manage multiple world crises at once. And make no mistake, we're in the middle of a series of crises that could get worse quickly. Right now, there is extreme concern about Russian activity in Western Europe and the Baltic states, extreme concern that the NATO alliance is under strain, while we've wasted munition after munition after munition on a poorly planned war that still isn't over. We're in a period of voluntary vulnerability that is very dangerous, and this guy is renaming lakes. There is no wonder his approval rating is falling. The only miracle is that it's as high as 33%.